pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll with planet. Water towers, fly! Flight downside, SPD off. SPD off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
And good morning and welcome to Port Canaveral, where we are waiting for the return of booster 1049.6, which launched a Starlink mission on Tuesday the 18th of August and is now ready to come back into Port Canaveral on the deck of course, I Still Love You, to be hoisted off for refurbishment and reflight. I am Chris Gebhardt, the Assistant Managing Editor of NASASpaceflight, and I am joined today by the wonderful
Julia Bergeron, also from NASASpaceflight, photographer, and you're in Port Gal.
Yes, indeed. And, all right, Julia, what are we going to see today?
Well, we're going to see up first. We are going to see B1049.6, so our very first sixth return of a booster. I know the last time I went out for a fifth flight to the pad, I actually thought maybe there was a rocket lab rocket on the pad, because it looked so scorched that a black booster was on the pad. So this is going to be interesting to see how this looks coming in.
It really will. And of course we saw a tug go out, so the tug went out to meet them at the port channel entrance, so they are on their way in. We were anticipating the start of those operations around 7:30, so they should be on their way into the mouth of the port. Right now, we are a little bit into port right now, so we don't have that we don't have that ocean view, primarily because we wanted the stream to be continuous. So we wanted to get that shot of it coming down the channel, turning the camera around, and then being able to show you exactly where it berths and everything without having to shut everything down and rush to a new location. So we figured setting up here would be a good idea. It also keeps us a little bit more distanced from people who crowd the pier down there, but we are standing by for that booster to come around. The American Liberty is the name of the ship that you see there. But Julia, 5 minutes before we went on air, we noticed something really freaking cool that you can now see from port.
Our horizon is changing at Cape Canaveral, and what you can see from Port Canaveral is pretty amazing, actually. Y'all, we're going to get some really cool launch views from right here in port, because Chris is about to show you the towers over at the Blue Origin launch pad. So that gives you an idea just how close Port Canaveral is to where New Glen.
To where New Glen is, and you can tell, I mean, just from the height of the water tower that you can see, the two lightning protection masts that they have up. Now, you're going to be able to see portions of New Glen standing right here on the dock at Port Canaveral when it is vertical on the pad, ready for its flight operations and everything.
Chris, this is closer than watching a launch in Titusville from US-1, which is 12 miles
100%.
from 39A, 40, 41, that general area. This has got to be probably the best view of a launch I've ever seen publicly.
It really is. I mean, it's one of the closest pads you can actually get to. I think technically 46, where the ascent abort for Orion is closer, but it's a very small pad and you can't see it with the naked eye from here. You actually have to go all the way down to the end of the jetty and out to the end of the dock, and then you can see that pad. But in terms of like the force of New Glen and the thrust that it's going to put out, the sound that those BE-4s are going to make as they light, this is going to be epic viewing here in Port Canaveral, because finally in Port Canaveral you will be able to see a rocket on the pad and not have, oh well, you'll see it 10 seconds after it lifts off. But we just kind of noticed that as we were standing here. We just kind of looked over and was like, wait a minute,
Wait,
those are lightning towers.
And can you remember a time when we thought that water tower was huge?
Right.
That water tower actually makes the lighthouse look tiny.
It really does.
So compared to Launch Complex 46, it almost, from the distance, looks like those are almost twice as high.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does from a distance. I mean, I can't wait to see that pad in person. and just what that must look like. Because I remember the last time I saw it, the last time we as members of the media really got to see it, was in the daylight, was going out to set remotes for Ascent Abort 2, the Orion flight in July of last year. And of course, everything was just a skeletal frame. I mean, it was a mound of dirt getting moved around. It was the skeletal frame of the horizontal integration facility. And then the next time we drove by it for the Pegasus launch, it was dark, so we couldn't really see anything.
True.
So it has been a while since we have been able to see the blue pad up close and see what progress they've been making. But it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, because I know you got a couple pictures of it out on the boat tours and everything.
Yeah.
But that was when we could do boat tours earlier this year in February. Yeah.
We're operating with no boat tours right now. There's no public tours out on base. So really, there's a lot going on out there that we maybe would have seen from people taking tours. That it's just kind of, one day we're going to go out there and go, whoa.
Exactly.
There's a lot of development, isn't there? There's the new launch pads between 39A and 41.
Yes. So I believe it's called Slick 48.
Correct.
Is the small launch pad that's being built on Kennedy Space Center property between the Atlas pad and the 39A pad for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. That is one of those things that, you know, they knew they were proceeding forward with it. They know they need a dedicated pad to attract people like Rocket Lab here to the Cape, because nobody wants, well, now especially, you know, none of the small sat launchers wanted to share 39C, which is inside the pad 39B perimeter, and of course the contracts for those, NASA was very clear that SLS gets priority. So you could have a mission that you've been planning for the US government for years, and you do everything and it sticks to schedule, and then an SLS mission comes and pushes you out of the way. And no one was really wanting to roll those dice. The only company that was willing to was Northrop Grumman with Omega, and of course the status of Omega is very much up in the air right now, having not won one of the NSSL awards. Those went, of course, to SpaceX and the United Launch Alliance for Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and Vulcan. For those of you watching our stream, we're going to get to your questions. If you've got questions about this booster, about anything we've been talking about Port Canaveral, about the Cape, about everything, this is your chance. Ask Julia questions about Port and everything like that. But while we're waiting for the booster, we see one of the ships coming on in the channel now.
There's GoQuest.
There is GoQuest coming on in, so the booster is not far behind.
That means crew transfers happened, right?
Right.
That actually happened, oh gosh, as I was coming here today. They had already left, so.
Right. So the booster should be not too far behind them. But, you know, ask us your questions, send us your questions, and we will go ahead and get them answered. Because Julie, one of the things about that I was going to say about Vulcan is, for those of you who are watching, yesterday I was very fortunate enough to be able to interview Mark Peller, who is the VP of Major Development at United Launch Alliance. We got a great update on everything Vulcan, where every part of that rocket and the ground systems and the software and the launch teams and everything. So we will have that actually up on NSF later today. A nice overview on where Vulcan currently stands in its development as it heads toward first flight next year with Peregrine to the moon.
I'm excited.
Yes, so it's all go. So ask away, ask your questions. You know, sometimes if you tag us in chat, it helps us. It helps us see them a little more clearly. And before we continue, I do want to give a shout out to John Galloway, who I will always refer to as DOS, because that's how I first learned his name. So he is forever DOS to me. But a shout out to DOS, and a big shout out to Michael Baylor, who is our behind the scenes producer and director for this stream, who will be feeding us and asking the questions as well. Major thank you to both of you guys behind the scenes. You know, it's not just Julie and I coming out here with the camera and pointing it and hitting a button. It's DOS, and it's John DOS. I'm going to call you John DOS. It's John DOS and Michael behind the scenes that really actually make all of this possible for all of us. So a huge thank you to both of you.
Thank you guys. I know you had to wake up super early to help us today, Michael.
Yes, especially those not in the Eastern time zone. Thank you.
So hey,
yes.
You know what? we should talk about fairing catchers.
We should, and you know what? Why should we talk about fairing catchers? Because I turn around and I look, and
you can't see them, can you?
No, well, I can't see them, but I know they're there.
Well, do you know they're there? Because they could be on the north dock.
Well, they could be. Well, they're here in port. I meant, yeah.
Yeah. So they're
Oh,
over
there.
on,
I see them on the north dock.
Yeah.
I can see the
So we can't actually see, and to make things short, I'm going to call them mystery and mischief, because that's really what mystery and mischief means. So mystery and mischief. So guess what? Mystery caught a fairing, and the big question is, which fairing was it? Was it the one that had the tattoo marking of being caught before, or was it the one that had the splashdown marking? That we don't actually know.
They were reflown fairings.
Right, they were reflown
yeah.
fairings. So Trevor actually caught our first view of a caught fairing and what that tattoo looks like, and it's a mini fairing catcher boat, and it's so cute.
Nice.
So we know Ms. Tree, she brought back a fairing half that was caught in the net, and Mischief brought back one that was fished out of the water. So it appeared that we had two complete fairing halves that can be refurbished and fly again. So now what in the world is going to happen when we've got, basically, we're going to have what, back-to-back missions coming up this week? We're going to be a little tired?
So let's talk about this. This is GoQuest coming back into port, having done the crew transfer off of course I Still Love You, and all the crews that were out there getting the booster secured and staying with it on its journey back. GoQuest coming back down the channel now. The booster not far behind. We cannot see the booster yet from our vantage point, but of course we will get that epic view of it coming down the channel. But yeah, so next week's going to be fascinating for a bunch of reasons. We have a predicted tropical storm or hurricane that will be either crossing South Florida and impacting our weather here in Central Florida on Monday.
Right.
And if the impacts to all of that are not huge here, and it generally stays where they're predicting it'll go, and at the intensity, the low intensity they predict it'll be, it'll be an open-ended question about what our weather is here in Central Florida in the run-up. And the reason we're talking about that storm is because on Wednesday morning at 2:16 a.m. we have a United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy that is that will be launching the NROL-44 mission for the U.S. Space Force, the U.S. government. Not the Space Force, I'm sorry, for the National Reconnaissance Office. That's what NRO stands for. We've got NRO, we've got NSSL, we've got the USSF, we've got the USAF. It's acronym soup out here. So we have that mission going Wednesday morning at 2:16 in the morning. Epic, Delta Force epic, and it's especially epic at night.
It's gonna be my first one watching so close. I'm so excited.
Nice. But then, of note, right after that, the following day is when SpaceX will launch SAOCOM 1B on Thursday from Slick 40. That will be the resumption of polar trajectory missions from Florida for the first time in 60 years. And if that wasn't enough, there's a Starlink mission that will follow the following day on Friday. So we have the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th, 3 launches basically within 48 to 50 some odd hours of each other, which is a very, very busy week here at Cape Canaveral. And of course there's a hurricane.
And photographers trying to figure out how we're going to split our gear and what shots we're going to do.
Because this becomes a huge question, right? It's not so much the timing between the Delta and the Falcon for NRO 44 and SAOCOM. That's the issue. Those are actually separated by a good 36 hours. There should be enough time to grab cameras, especially since we're not setting cameras at the Delta pad.
Right.
For remotes, we're actually going to be setting them at the Apollo 1 pad, Slick 34, for that mission. So that will also aid in getting our cameras back. But then the real trick becomes SAOCOM 1B and Starlink going within basically 24 hours of one another, or less, because we don't actually know the launch time yet for Starlink on Friday. And of course, all of these missions are dependent on NROL 44 launching on the Delta IV, because it has priority as the National Reconnaissance Office mission. But more so, it definitely has to be gone and out of the way for SAOCOM to launch, because going south on
yeah.
SAOCOM affects 37B, and the whole reason SAOCOM ended up having to be delayed from the beginning of the month when it was originally rescheduled after the COVID-19 pandemic began, and the Argentine engineers and technicians who need to be here because it's an Argentine satellite couldn't come here.
Right.
So they had to delay the mission from March for that. And then it was originally rescheduled for August, and then we got this weird thing from the Argentine Space Agency saying because of a range conflict, we can't actually launch until the end of the month. And at first a bunch of us were like, well, what range conflict? Are they doing a down period? Are they doing a maintenance period?
Oh, yeah.
And then we got confirmation that no, it's because NROL 44 was stacked on the Delta. And once NROL was stacked, that was it. You can't do the Southern Polar Launch Corridor from 40 or 41 or 39A once you've got a classified military satellite sitting on 37B, because your trajectory might actually take you directly over it, but it would definitely take you close enough that if you experienced a low altitude failure...
Oh, yeah. We'd have a bad day.
Yes. So to protect NROL 44, SAOCOM can't go until that mission is either destacked off the Delta or launches, and of course it's going to launch now.
Right, right.
So
this is such a...
yeah, so everything is dependent first on the hurricane and
Right.
then on NROL 44, but it could shape up to be a very sleepless week for a lot of us here in Central Florida. Yeah.
It's exciting though, don't get us wrong.
Oh, 100%. This is a good problem to have.
But please forgive us if
yes.
we like really wish we had an edit button for tweets, because trying to remember what day it is, which launch it is, what booster number it is. I have a hard enough time already.
I think it's good enough to give it away because it's going to show our process. So Julia literally has the booster number written on the palm of her hand. And when I was driving down here this morning, the hour-long drive, I just, in my car, I was going B1049.6, B1049.6, like just drew. Now, which one is this?
When am I actually had to kind of write myself a note of what day is what and when do I think what's going to happen and what am I doing? What's my role that launch?
Right.
Am I watching it on base? Am I watching public side? It's, you know, it's a lot to think of. But this is probably really exciting for the range because it has been a long time, not only since we've had basically almost daily launches from Cape, but the first time in 60 years we'll have that.
Yeah.
That southern trajectory.
Yeah, and the first time in a long time we're going to have an RTLS.
Oh my gosh.
A booster.
I'm excited for an RTLS. And to tell
what was
people...
it, December, CRS-19 was the last time we RTLS'd a booster back to Florida.
That's a long time ago, yeah. And I got so excited because for RTLS, sometimes the Cape can offer photographers a really, really, really cool view at Launch Complex 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I got all excited and I said, oh, Chris, is that going to be an opportunity? And then I went, he goes, no, we're watching from the causeway. And I went, oh.
Here comes, look, there it is. We can see it through the other ships. It's around the corner.
So yeah, because you know what? If I was at Launch Complex 9, I would be right in the danger zone.
Right, because it's going to overfly you going back to LZ1.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing, and here's why we needed to stop and talk about the schedule for this week. Because the fairing catchers, if SpaceX is going to do SAOCOM on Thursday and Starlink on Friday. Right. Now, SAOCOM's booster will RTLS back to Cape Canaveral and land on LZ1. Based on the liftoff time, it's about 30 minutes prior to sunset. Going to be freaking epic viewing if the clouds and weather hold for us.
Yep. What about those fairings?
But what about the so that takes care of, you don't need both just read the instructions and of course I still love you, which we don't think they could actually support because of the cruise ships and everything.
Yeah, right now we don't have a second tug here.
Right. So how they would get two out there is a bit of an open-ended question. Not that we don't think they couldn't do it, but it frees them up. Yeah. But what about the fairing catchers? Which mission gets the fairing catchers? Do you catch the SAOCOM fairings or do you catch the Starlink fairings?
I think we're gonna see the first time that the twins get split up.
One goes south and one goes north?
One will go north, one will go south. Now, do I know this for a fact? No, I don't. But what I do know is that Mystery went out this last week with two fairing halves on her deck. And they went out off the coast, and I think they were learning how to manage two fairing halves.
On a single boat.
On a single boat.
Because that's the only way you would get And $12 million is a lot to throw away, because the two complete fairings are $12 million.
Right.
So that's a lot of money to throw away. So yeah, if you could, I mean, and who knows what they might try to do. Maybe they'll let both of them parachute into the water in both cases, and then they'll just go fish them out. Maybe they'll try to catch one and then go fish the other one out of the water, you know.
I think the hope is that you catch one and you fish one, because there's going to be a trick. If you scoop one and you have to scoop the other, trying to get that net out from underneath that first scoop is going to be a little difficult on deck.
Right.
So the hope is that now Elon talked about, they've totally closed the loop on those fairing catchers. They are actually operated from Hawthorne when they are making the catch attempt.
Because Hawthorne is relaying where the data from the fairing coming down,
Talk
right?
about dynamic
Where are they?
positioning.
Where are they? Go left, right, you know, yeah.
Oh my gosh, so we went from sending satellites up at Cape for the first time ever to being using those satellites to catch a fairing that's falling down and transmitting data to a ship that's being controlled from the other coast.
Well, the booster that launched it is autonomously talking and landing on a drone ship. All at the same time, yes.
So,
and here, just real quick, what you're looking at is we're looking through some rigging, and the side of the ship, the American Liberty, and that is the booster. That is 1049.6, making its way into the entrance of the channel here at Port Canaveral. We will lose it momentarily behind the American Liberty, and then we will regain it as the booster and the tug and the drone ship, which is, of course, I Still Love You, for this particular mission, reemerges on the other side of that. But this is what I was kind of hoping we would be able to see, like, to get it between the two ships and the scaffolding and the rigging and everything as it starts to come in, which has worked out very, very nicely. But while we're waiting for that, so that's sort of like the overview of what we think they might be doing and how they're going to manage trying to catch $12 million worth of fairings to bring back for recovery and reuse. But one of the things we do definitely want to do, we want to answer your questions. So Michael, do we have any questions? Do we have any super chats we should go through, or things along that line?
Yes, Chris. We have a couple of questions. I'll take the one about Boca Chica. When is the static fire, and will we be covering it? The static fire is currently scheduled for Sunday, and if that happens on Sunday, you can bet we'll be covering it live. And then a question probably for Julia. Guess who is asking, why does it take this long for a booster to return after launch?
So the question is, why does it take so long for a booster to return after launch?
Well, a few things have to happen once a booster lands on one of the drone ships. What needs to happen is that booster actually has to be secured. So on deck we see Octograbber. Octograbber is not exactly autonomous. It is a robot, but the crew does indeed need to be on the drone ship in order to secure a booster. The crew cannot go on a drone ship until the booster is safe and all the fuel and the cells, all of that is safe for humans to board. And you can't do that at night either, by the way.
Because there's no floodlights.
Right.
You can't light up the pad like you can't light up the drone ship like you can a pad. Yeah.
It's really dark in the middle of the Atlantic, and you're still doing that crew transfer we do offshore here. You're doing that at sea. So they go from GoQuest, they go onto the drone ship, and then Octograbber is deployed, and they ensure that the booster is secure, and then they can come back onto GoQuest, and everybody can come home. Now, you can only go so fast with a drone ship being towed by a tug. You can see something like the fairing catchers go 20 knots when they're catching a fairing, and they're zooming through. But at most you'd see like 8 knots coming back from while you got a tug. So the Starlink missions tend to have a little bit farther away landing zone to the north.
Yeah, they're about 630 kilometers northeast.
634 kilometers. So, and you're coming against the Gulf Stream too. So you have that going for you. The best way to know when they're going to come back is basically watching, tracking, and seeing, okay, it took 3 days to get out there, and then they waited a little bit, so you know it's going to take about 3 days to come back.
Yeah.
The other thing to know is we don't come back into port at night. So if they come back, they wait out at the edge of port at the anchorage before they come in.
Which is, I believe, what they did last night. They actually anchored off port because they got here.
And
Like
Chris,
2
can you
a.m.,
zoom in on
3
the
a.m.,
ship,
yeah.
please?
They
Oh,
were waiting.
was that early? Oh, is that?
Well, they were waiting at the anchorage. They were already close by, and then they kind of came over to the anchorage later on in the morning.
Gotcha.
Perfect.
So we don't come into port during dark hours, and there's a few reasons for that. One of them is safety, because you just never know. You need tug escort to come in. You are bringing in something that potentially has dangerous, dangerous chemicals that could potentially slip and fall over. You never know. So Harbor Master says, yeah, we're coming in during the day. The other thing is, your work crew does have to meet you at the dock for berthing, so that they can actually process the booster.
Right, which we'll see them start to do. We'll see them get docked up. I know both of you and I have to leave about 9 a.m. local time, in just a little over an hour or so. But I mean, like, we're not going to cut it off if there's something major happening.
Right.
But yeah, and you know, so with these rules, with these safety rules in the harbor, what part of the harbor is going to have to close for a southern polar trajectory route when Falcon launches on Thursday?
Well,
Do parts of the jetty have to close
It's
because
possible.
of how close Falcon 9 is going to hug the coastline?
it's possible. Maybe they won't allow people out on the jetty itself, but I don't believe it's exactly possible to close the beaches.
Right.
So the jetty, where people go out and they get that first view of the booster, that possibly might be a no. Where we are right now, that'll be okay.
Right. You can't close this area.
Yeah, you can't close this area, but the harbor master could say no ships going out after a certain point.
Right.
So we're interested
Because
to
they
see
would-
what those marine warnings look
Because
like.
ships leaving the port could potentially breach the safety.
Right.
Well, they would breach the safety zone very.
So we might
quickly
see
going
all
out,
of those
yeah.
cruise ships come back into port
Or
to
go
dock,
further out.
or go farther out, so that they're out of the hazard
Yeah.
zone. That's something to watch for.
Are there still people on those cruise ships?
Yes.
So there
There's
are
some
still
crew.
people under quarantine and some crew
Yeah.
out there. Yeah.
There's still some crew.
Yeah. We do have cruise ship. This is a huge cruise ship port in Port
Yeah.
Canaveral, as well as an industrial port, and we do have some cruise ships that are still under quarantine out off the coast for COVID.
Right. At the
yes.
very earliest, they'll start operating October 1st, but I think they're assessing some of the smaller ship companies that are kind of dabbling and going out worldwide right now to see how that goes for them. But that's really impacted our area.
Well, it really has. It really has.
It's made this easier, though.
Well, yes, because normally there would be a gigantic cruise ship right here.
Well, yeah, we'd have a
yes.
cruise ship. We would have had to wait for these cruise ships to come in before a booster can come in.
Right,
too.
the booster probably wouldn't be coming in until 10 or 11 o'clock this morning. Yeah, closer to noon. Yeah, they would have had to wait out at the anchorage. But Michael, any other questions that we've got, or as we wait for the booster to make its appearance around the side of the American Liberty there?
We're getting a couple of questions about Omega. Is that cancellation confirmed yet, or is that just internal Northrop Grumman comms that we think is canceled?
Yeah, so there's been nothing official from Northrop Grumman on Omega yet, but there are rather large and multiple sources out there that are saying that internally employees have been informed that Omega is canceled outright and will not continue after not winning any of the NSSL contracts, but nothing official at this point yet.
Okay, and do we know if B1049 will fly again, and if it does, which mission?
So it will, I mean, as far as we know, it will definitely fly again. It landed successfully. Fleet leaders usually always get a little bit more attention than other ones do after they perform when they become
milestone.
right, exactly, when they perform new thank you, milestones. That was the word I was looking for. So I wouldn't necessarily expect this one to aim for the world record turnaround that Falcon 9 holds now from a different booster, but I would definitely expect it to be reused. I mean, nothing about the flight, nothing that Elon has said indicates that they saw anything in the data that came back from it that would give them pause. So it'll definitely fly again, unless their inspection, because it's a fleet leader, finds something that they don't like. But again, I mean, that's a big hypothetical there. But I would expect it to fly again. Probably 3 months would be my guess. I mean, the fleet, they're seeming to be turning the fleet leaders around in 2.5 to 3 months.
Yeah.
And then the non-fleet leaders, they're doing quicker. They're definitely doing quicker now.
So on that note, what does that look like for static fires? Because with what we've got coming up right now and multiple birds on pads, so what we might see is something like a veteran booster like this, especially as it reaches those new milestones. Maybe this is something that will static fire with a Starlink on it, whereas maybe it's about to be the second flight of that booster, we might not see a static fire.
But so correct me if I might be misremembering this, but didn't this one? I don't think they did a static fire on this one, because they static fired the previous Starlink on 30. They did. When did they do a
It was at the
static fire?
crack of dawn, the day before the launch.
But they did one.
6 a.m. the day before.
Oh, that's why I missed it. I was asleep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was
Okay.
asleep too.
Because,
So,
but
it
the
happened.
only reason I ask is because we have seen them forego
Yeah.
static fires recently.
Yep.
There's at least one that I know
There's
I can
one.
pull from memory that they opted not to do the static fire for. I believe it was a Starlink flight, and they just hauled it out, fueled it,
Yep.
and went.
Yep. No, this one they did.
Okay, I'm starting to see a little bit of the tug emerging here, so the booster will be making its appearance momentarily from around American Liberty. But yeah, this is interesting because we have shown that for their internal missions, they are at points willing to forego static fire.
Right. Added risk
right.
due to what they've learned from each time.
But yes, and I totally did miss this static fire. Of
Most
this one
people did.
Yeah, because I really honestly thought they didn't.
I woke up to cover it and I looked outside and went, and it's too dark. If I took a picture, you're really not going to see a heck of a lot. This isn't worth it. So I went back to bed. But
it was not. Oh, we got tricked. It was a tug. It was a port
it's
tender.
an escort. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That means the booster's like
no,
right next
it
to
is.
it.
I just thought it was. I was like, oh, it's a ship.
No, that's just one of our locals.
Yes. But you can also see the Orlando Princess going out with a bunch of people on board.
They'll have a great view.
Yeah. Well, you don't see it yet. You will see the Orlando Princess going by momentarily. But so Julia, walk me through this. How are boats just allowed to go right past a multi-million-dollar rocket?
Well, if that rocket was safe enough for the recovery team to stand on the deck, it's safe enough for us to be at a respectful distance from the equipment as it comes in. Now, this area, we're kind of used to space hardware. We had boosters and external tanks on barges that would come through for shuttle program.
Yep, this is where Pegasus comes to deliver the tanks, where it comes to deliver the core stage and the launch vehicle stage adapter for SLS, where they towed the booster rockets after they splashed down in the Atlantic. This is where they haul them in.
But yeah, so we've got our port tenders that escort that in.
There it is.
And they kind of create a little bit of a buffer zone around them, but as long as you don't interfere with the berthing operations and them coming down the channel, we're all good.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Go Navigator, when it came back with Endeavor into Port Canaveral, there was one Navy ship that kind of came in and let her in the gate. Otherwise, she was unescorted and came in, and it was a very different vibe than it was over on the other coast.
So, and I think that speaks to, and I think this was, you're winding toward what I was kind of trying to get at here. There's an immense respect for the operations that go on here. No, and we were very vocal. If Crew Dragon had landed out here in the Atlantic instead of off Pensacola,
that wouldn't have happened.
What you saw happen would not have happened, because we know far too well here the respect for the hardware, the
Yeah.
respect for the crew.
And I can tell you.
Oh my gosh, look how sooty that is.
Oh my gosh,
Look.
that's dark. And all of the charter captains that operate out of here work very closely with the Coast Guard and the base to observe hazard zones. They know what
Because
can
they-
happen if
right.
they don't observe them. You can
Right.
lose your license.
100%.
And that is their livelihood. So there's an immense respect. And that is a crazy dark booster.
That really is a crazy dark booster. Oh my god. Of course, this could be a trick of the lighting for us. It is somewhat backlit. It's overcast. It's not really. But I mean,
That's dark.
no, it is dark. Yeah. I'm just wondering how.
Oh, Chris, it's dark. Let me show you.
That is. We're zooming in on the photo Julia just took.
I mean, yes, there's some backlighting, Chris, but look at that.
Yeah, but that is, yeah, oh, it's amazing.
Even where the white of the legs would normally be, we're starting to get those tan lines are blurred.
The tan lines are blurred, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Falcon 9 definitely, it definitely has its summer tan.
Definitely. So now you can kind of imagine as this approaches you, okay? You as a viewer with our camera. Now imagine me in my car going toward a launch pad to set remotes. And this is the view you're seeing as you're coming up, is basically what we're seeing right now. As we
Sometimes
drive
they're on their
closer to
side.
it. Or they're, nah, I've been lucky. They've always been vertical.
Oh,
I've been lucky. And this is why I thought I saw, like, did they paint the booster black? Why would we do this? It didn't make sense in my brain, and I really had to put, connect the dots. Oh, that's right. It's just a 5-time, yeah. But part of this, like you said, is a little bit of that backlighting. Looking in my previous screen, though, that's a really dark
booster. Yeah, it really is.
Doing a Rocket Lab impression.
Yes, Falcon 9 is honoring Rocket Lab. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
because
I'm
as we
excited
are fond of saying, right?
Yeah.
A fully stacked Electron rocket is the size of one of the legs of the Falcon 9.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's roughly
What?
the size. It's roughly as tall. If you set the Falcon 9, if you fold up the legs, right?
That's like the height of the tug.
Yes,
With
and
its
that's
antenna.
that's the height of Electron.
Oh, that's so cute.
Fully stacked. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because you don't get a size comparison for Electron
Right.
at Mahia, right? When it launches from New Zealand, you do get that size, like that's how small but
Oh.
capable Electron is. Really does hit you in the face when you see their pictures from Wallops,
Right.
because
right.
it is right by the Antares pad.
True.
And I mean, it's barely taller than the concrete surface of
That's
the Antares
nuts.
pad.
I'm excited about that though, because they're going to start doing recovery of their first stage with a helicopter.
They are indeed. They're going to
Ah.
catch the first stage with a helicopter. And thank you for bringing that up, because that's why I wanted to bring up the size differential between them.
Yeah.
Because
now that makes sense.
there's a lot of questions, right, about like, well, how do you catch an entire first stage by helicopter? Well, because the entire first and second stage of Electron is only about as tall as when you fold up the Falcon 9's legs. So where its leg tan lines are, that's about as tall as Electron is.
And I think Chris is seeing the light bulb go off in my head now. It's like, oh, now I understand why a helicopter can actually get
Catch
that.
Electron, right?
Okay.
And why that is far more economical than
Yeah.
other kinds of recovery equipment for Electron, right? Whereas
Absolutely.
recovering an orbital booster
Yeah.
like this, the only way to do it, if you're recovering the entire booster, is to land it, like SpaceX is doing.
Oh,
Of course.
and
Oh,
there
yeah.
goes the pilot boat.
Yep, and
he's
of
going
course,
back.
ULA is looking at reusing the VE4 engines in the engine section of the Vulcan rocket as well. And Blue Origin is looking at doing exactly what SpaceX does, landing the New Glenn first stage out on some yet to be found, but apparently very impressive ship that they have planned.
Kyle Montgomery saw it.
Yeah.
You can't exactly tell it's terribly much different. But the thing is, we don't know what's going on the deck.
Well,
And that's
exactly,
the- yeah.
exactly.
That's the trick.
So here comes B1049.6, the first booster to fly 6 times. You can definitely see that this is a nice sooty booster. Just look at how much soot is on the outside of this right now.
Look at that beautiful reflection.
and just absolutely gorgeous. There's the top of it. I'm going to zoom back out because look at the reflection that Falcon 9 is casting on the water right now as it comes back into port. But yes, Michael, super chats, other questions or anything like that that have come in?
Let's see. Are boosters after 5 flights to be used only for Starlink missions?
So our boosters that have flown 5 times after that only to be used for Starlink missions. I think just kind of run of the draw, that's what we're going to end up seeing just from a statistical standpoint on their manifest. But
Yeah.
I don't believe they've ever put a limit on what they'll do for customers. I believe that would just come down to what the customer
faith
is comfortable with in that. But I mean, they have certainly proven that the Falcon 9s are more than capable and still highly reliable as they increase their flight rates. But right now you are correct that the high number flown boosters are sort of looking at Starlink. What Elon did say though is that they would never do a fleet leading flight with a paying customer, that they would do those on Starlink so that if they discover okay, well now we know that component is only good for X number of flights, it's only an internal mission that it's happened on, not a paying customer mission. So that's what they have said in regard to that. But nothing would preclude a 4th, 5th, or 6th flight booster from launching a paying customer mission if that is what if the customers so wanted.
And then a question about Go Searcher and Go
All right.
Navigator possibly being able to fish a fairing. I think that's maybe referring to the Falcon Starlink potential conflict.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Would Go Navigator or Go Searcher be able to fish a fairing out of the water? If required?
No.
No. Julia says no.
No. They don't have crane. Well, no.
They don't have the equipment to haul them out of the water like the fairing
They
catchers
can
do.
barely fit a fairing on the back.
Okay.
Winching it up would be, it's possible, but the way they're equipped now for Dragon, I don't think they'd want to risk that.
That particular thing, yeah.
Yeah. We've got a lot going on those ships now. I'm not saying it's not
And you can see
possible.
Octograbber there, latched onto the bottom of Falcon 9, and a worker for scale, a human for scale.
Oh, they don't even have the blankets on the arms of
No, they
Octograbber
don't.
right now.
Look at that. Octograbber's just out, and well, Octograbber wanted a tan as well. But I so just want to do this. Look at how sooty this booster is. Look at this.
You can barely read the SpaceX.
You can barely see SpaceX, you can barely see Falcon 9 and the logo at the top. I mean, look at how just, oh, so amazing. Look at that.
I'm going to have a hard time finding the number.
If you can find the number, let us know. We know where it is, but...
Oh, I know where it is.
Yeah.
I know where it should. Oh, wait. I think 5-1 was the first time we had it down below, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh no, they moved him on the block 5s. So whatever the first block 5 was for
Might be able to
Bunga.
find it in between the whites of the legs, maybe.
Yeah.
It's not very light anymore. There's Port Canaveral, where you can just,
Oh,
you know, go
and
right
look,
on by.
that's the little house where Octograbber lives.
There's the garage. That's
So
his home.
see? All right, and
And there you go, guys. There's your Falcon 9. And there's sirens behind us today.
and just so we can fully see, I mean, that is how sooty that booster is, that you can barely see Falcon 9 and the US flag, and you can really see the seams on the booster at this point as we just go down.
because I'm probably interested in you.
And there's Falcon 9's summer tan lines. Falcon 9 recommends at least 6 flights for a perfect summer tan.
That is crazy dark, Chris.
It really is.
Like,
It really is.
I can barely see the flag, the Falcon. That's pretty cool.
It really, really is. Okay, Julia, I need your assistance real quick. If you could grab the backpack.
All right.
And we're going to pick and walk. Together.
We're going.
Okay. Bear with us. We're just relocating for a second to the other side of the deck.
No worries, Chris.
And I might need, yeah.
And while they're doing that, Darmian Hernandez has a super chat. Breakfast and construction for Chris and Julia. Breakfast construction for Chris and Julia. So there is some $10 towards breakfast fund this morning for Chris and Julia. We really appreciate your support, Darmian. Or Dariam, I probably pronounced your name wrong. I apologize.
Do the photographers on the other dock?
All right. And there we go. We can see it going further down the channel now as it came on by us. Any other questions, Mike? We're all done with the reconfig on our. Oh, what you got, Mike?
Okay, cool.
But we're all done moving. So any other more questions? Yeah. More questions for everyone who's wondering.
A couple of questions about Blue Origin's recovery process. Do we expect them to use a test landings before, make sure they don't risk the boat?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do we, we don't know a lot about, the question, Julia, is, what do we know about, sorry. Julia! Hang on.
Hi!
Okay. So sorry, the question is, what do we know about Blue Origin's landing procedures? Do we think they're going to, do we think they're going to attempt some test landings first so they don't accidentally destroy the boat?
I don't know.
I don't know. Blue is. These
quiet.
are all very good questions, and they're answers that we really do wish we had. They're really good questions that we wish we had answers to. But honestly, at the end of the day, we don't know. Blue Origin has not been very talkative or communicative about what their recovery plans are, exactly what their testing procedures are going to be, how they're going to do it. I believe, if I remember correctly, that at one point they did say that that the missions and the way they've designed New Glenn, they don't believe they'll be able to return to launch site land it, so it's always got to be a downrange landing on the ship. But that was years ago. That could have changed.
Because I want to.
But I remember at some point Blue said they were only interested in the at-sea landings. That they weren't
Right.
looking at flyback and landing here at Cape Canaveral. But
I know I read in a local, like a Pensacola, or not yeah. Wait. Yeah, I was right. Pensacola. That's where they are now.
yes.
In one of the Pensacola newspapers, they actually said they somehow managed to get Blue Origin to talk a little bit that we won't actually see that ship here for a while.
Right.
Part of the development of the dock that they're at and the construction that came with accommodating a ship of that size, they did kind of commit to calling that home port for a little while, including some of the first missions. So New Glenn may launch. I know that this is, like I said, a newspaper in Pensacola.
Yeah.
So we may see those first couple test launches not even return to this port. That they were talking about it coming back to Pensacola. Does that exactly make sense? No, maybe
But they were
the ship will come back to
about
Pensacola.
the ship or the booster, because I could see the ship going back there if there's not a dock here available to it. But...
See, and that's the gap that I couldn't figure
Right.
out. I'm going to say I would assume the booster would get dropped off and the ship would go back. Now, part of that too
but that
is
assumes the booster lands successfully
Right.
on their first attempt, because I would imagine they'd also want to attempt water landings like SpaceX did with the
Yeah,
Falcon 9
yeah.
at first to sort of help verify. And, you know, with the size of New Glenn, you know, like I imagine they're also going to be fortifying that ship to be able to withstand
Yeah.
tip over ruds and everything. Like, of course, I Still Love You was built to withstand, you know, a potential
Right.
failing Falcon 9 coming down on it, which it has had happen, right? I mean, that video
Yeah.
that Elon has released, you know, some of the early landing attempts of Falcon 9s
Those are-
really beat up, of course, I Still Love You. But
Hey.
yeah, I wish we knew a lot more about Blue's recovery plans, but we
Yeah.
just don't.
I
The
mean-
only other outfit here at the Cape that we know their recovery plans for is really ULA with the BE4 engine section of Vulcan, because we know that recovery system is not get the whole booster back, it's get the engine section back and catch it with the helicopter,
yeah.
as it descends under parachute.
Right.
But,
And Tori's
and then other than
mentioned
that,
that's
no, we
also
don't
like
know,
an
yeah.
incremental learning process as well.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
But it's a good question. Wish we had an answer for you. But sadly, that's all we really know about Blue's recovery plans right now.
There's a ship. It's in Pensacola. It belongs to them, and it's being modified.
And Kyle Henry has seen it. We know it exists.
Or-
Or Kyle Montgomery has
Kyle
seen
Montgomery
it.
has
Sorry.
seen it.
Yes,
Um,
we know it exists.
Yeah. We know it belongs to them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So, good question. Really wish we had an answer for you on that one, but yeah. Any other questions, Michael?
Do we know if the soot on the booster affects the mass lift capability, I think they're asking, of the booster?
Oh, this is a great question. So the question, Julia, is do we know if the soot on the booster affects the up mass properties of the rocket?
Oh.
The answer to that is it actually does. It is very, very minuscule, very, very negligible,
Yeah.
to the point where it doesn't actually affect it. It's not like they would say, oh, we can't go on a 7th flown booster because there's too much soot. We
Too
have to
much.
go on a 6th. But it does, because any mass that does accumulate on the vehicle
Impacts.
is mass that you're
Yeah.
hauling up and is mass that you then can't deliver
Sure.
into orbit. But
It's mass that uses fuel that impacts your payload.
exactly.
I often
But
get
but
asked.
but the actual answer to your question is no.
Okay.
The soot does not appreciably affect it to the point where you would actually see them having to swap boosters around because the soot on them was too much to negate their use. You would never see that, but it does technically affect the up mass capability.
And you know, something I often get asked, or a comment I see a lot on my feed, is why don't they clean that off? Well, you can't clean that off. Some people call it soot. What
not,
it is
yeah.
it's actually scorch.
Yeah.
It is now a part of that booster. You can't Mr. Clean Magic Eraser that. You can't scrub it off. You can't power wash it.
We have
You
seen them
can
do
grind it.
some exactly where they have cleaned parts
Yeah.
of it to do the seam.
But what happens when you do that? You actually could weaken your seam.
Right.
You could cause points that could bubble.
Right.
Or yeah.
And Elon has been really clear, and so has SpaceX, that there's no need to clean them.
Yeah, there's no need to, and it impacts your turnaround time.
Right.
So-
Right. And it was just like, and this John Krause is here, so he's going to make fun of me. But it's the same reason they didn't clean the shuttle orbiters between missions.
Sure.
It's the same reason they didn't replace tiles and thermal blankets on the shuttles just because they were dirty or weren't as dark as they were when new, or the blankets got scorches, because you didn't need to. There was no reason. So when there was a reason to, they did, and when there wasn't, they wouldn't. And that's the very same principle that SpaceX is operating under. Oh, Julia did manage to find the core number on the side of the booster. Very excellent. But yeah, that was a great question. Really great question there. Any others, Michael?
Yes. Didn't Elon say that the Falcon 9 boosters could fly up to 100 times? Do you think we'll ever see a 100 times flown booster, or will Starship have Falcon obsolete by then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, the Falcons are designed for at least 100 flights. per their design, they are supposed to undergo more extensive inspections after each 10th flight that they do. But when Shotwell did say, either earlier this year, or I believe it was earlier this year, that based on what they were seeing in terms of ordering and Starship production and development, that they don't actually anticipate that any booster will get there. And Gwen Shotwell really said that that was a function of their customers, primarily the US government, that just really want to buy new boosters and don't want to use reflown boosters. And I believe her exact quote was something along the lines of, they want to pay me to build 5 new boosters a year, I'll build 5 new boosters a year. And you know, and there's no problem, continuing to do that. So yes, they are built to fly 100 times each, but as it stands right now with Starship development and the Falcon flight rate, and what customers are ordering, they do not anticipate any of the boosters getting to that milestone, but it is possible.
Now, y'all,
Yeah.
before I post, I'm going to have Chris look at the image I'm editing to tell me if his eyes think that's what he saw when he came in. So it's not a trick of the lighting, it's not...
No, that's what I saw. That's exactly what it looked like
so
here.
This is not a trick of backlighting that I'm going to post for y'all. Chris, just look.
We are referring to how dark the booster actually is from the scorch marks on the side of it. But yes, any other more questions? More questions, Michael?
Are the boosters linked by software to the drone chips like the fairings and fairing catchers?
Can you repeat the first part of that? I think I heard.
Are
what's
the
the
boosters?
software that flies
Yeah, are the
boosters to the drone
boosters
ship?
linked by software to the drone chips like the fairings and the fairing catchers?
Ah, gotcha. So it's a yes and no answer to that. The drone ship does have antennas and communication equipment so that it can acquire so that the booster can acquire the signal of the drone ship and can hone in on the drone ship's exact location. The coordinates of the drone ship are pre-programmed into Falcon 9's flight computers and flight software, so it knows where it's aiming for. But then the communication back and forth between the booster and the drone ship in the final landing burn sequence is the how to get it dead center onto the drone ship based on where the drone ship is. So in that regard, yes, the software does link them together by allowing them to talk to one another, and the booster to go, I'm here, and the drone ship goes, I'm here, and then they can zero in on, the booster can zero in on the drone ship. For the fairings, for the fairing returns, how that works is the data and the telemetry from the fairings are relayed by ground control teams in Hawthorne to the Mystery and Mischief operators, who help guide them to get them directly underneath where the fairing is going to land. So while the systems do talk to one another, it's kind of the reverse in how they operate, where the booster aims and flies itself to the drone ship, versus the fairing catcher ships drive themselves underneath where the fairings are actually going to splash down into the water. So yes, but it works kind of, but the reverse in terms of which is the active vehicle and which is the passive vehicle for the catch and recovery attempts.
This was a 10th Starlink mission, right?
This was Starlink V1 Flight 10, which would make it the 11th overall Starlink flight.
See,
Yes.
I have to ask.
That's the booster, yes. Well, that's why on our Discord it's just whatever this one is now.
The next.
The next.
The last. Yeah.
The next one. Yes. So, but good question. Very good question there. And we're good to just answer the question queue that we've got here, Michael. In the
that was the last
here.
one
If you
I
just want to
had
keep feeding us questions.
in the queue. If you have more questions, just tag
Oh.
at NASASpaceflight, and I will keep looking. But oh wait, there's one. Couldn't they use a helicopter
Yes,
to catch the
indeed.
fairings?
Why don't they use a helicopter to catch the fairings? So in this case, the fairings are huge. They're also really far out there. We're talking, you know, deployment 700, you know, catching attempts 750 kilometers downrange.
Even to Morehead City.
From the launch site into Morehead City, it's about 300 kilometers. It's just not really hugely economical to catch them with a helicopter versus the ships, because if you figure too that if they've got to catch them, if they were going to catch them with a helicopter, then you still have to have the two ships out there to bring the fairings to and actually lower the fairings onto the deck. Or conversely, you would have to fly the fairings to Morehead City, North Carolina, if it was a Starlink mission going onto the northeast corridor route there, or you would have to fly them back 700 kilometers under helicopter. You would need 2 helicopters to catch both fairings, which adds to your expense and adds to your risk. And honestly, a ship at sea is a lot less risk than a helicopter.
Yeah.
And it's just economically more viable to have the fairing catcher ships out there doing it than it is to try to catch them under parachute. And yeah, for those of you listening and watching, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to our channel members who are watching. Thank you to the person who gave us we got a breakfast super chat.
Aww,
for
thank
breakfast
you.
and coffee. Yes. And thank you for that. We really appreciate it. It's the channel membership support. It's watching our live stream. It's the super chats as well that really help us bring you this coverage like we do here today, which I know, Julia, you and I are trying to do this more often,
Yeah.
but sometimes
It's hard.
But sometimes timing makes it really, really hard to get down here every single time. But these booster returns are something we want to do more often, and it's definitely support from all of our community members that make this that makes this possible. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I also want to say thank you to everyone. Even since I've come on board with NSF, our coverage has changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This YouTube channel was born, memberships. I mean, we already had the forums in level 2, which is an awesome place to go discuss things. But holy cow, YouTube's just opened up a whole nother world for us. So
It really has.
thank you for supporting us, and thank you guys for supporting me as I learn. Video is not a native tongue for me. So as I come into port and I try and make these videos on my own, I'm doing a lot of learning, and I personally don't get to use really fancy equipment right now for a lot of that. So I just got new cameras, and I'm learning how to use the video functions on those to up my game a little bit. But thanks for learning with us and joining us on that journey.
Exactly. So you can see they've got it turned around on the tugs now, and they are pushing it over towards the dock.
Wow.
You can see it's behind, well, it's behind the blue. Hang on, let's move this. Can you pick up the,
Yeah, let me stop.
We're going to reposition, hang on.
There you go.
There we go, that's better. Yes, so they are pushing it over toward the dock. The dock is basically right where you see that Sunrise Marina sign, is where they're going to dock.
That's called North Cargo Pier 6, by the way.
North Cargo Pier 6, and we can scooch a little bit more too to keep the views and everything stable as they approach the docking port. What? North
Cargo Pier 6.
North Cargo Pier 6. As
Because
they
we also
approach it.
have cruise terminals and cruise
Right,
piers here,
exactly.
So that's a cargo pier.
Exactly.
And that is not the northernmost pier. They're working
No.
on completing the new spaceport now, actually.
They are indeed. I believe that's where Mischief and Mystery are on
Exactly.
the north side
Yep.
over there. Yes, which makes sense that they would vacate the area for the drone ship.
Gonna make it a lot harder
I believe
down the
that's
road.
I believe that's also where Just Read the Instructions is, right?
Yeah.
Where's Just Read? Yeah, it's around on the
I think
north
it's
side
around
too,
the
because
corner.
it's being refurbed right now. Again, it's
they're
getting
doing some
they're
maintenance.
getting some work done on it. Yeah.
Because I know
Because
you
we
were
anticipate
asked.
that'll be the one that goes out for Starlink next week.
Probably,
The-
yeah.
They're
They were swapping, but a lot of people went, why is Of Course I Still Love You still doing all of the work right now?
Right.
Because we thought she was going to get upgraded, but that takes a long time to do those thrusters.
True.
And I think they're still kind of testing out the brand new ones on Just Read the Instructions.
They might be. Well, and they've clearly nailed the communication upgrades to Of Course I Still Love You, because I think that was the second time in a row that the camera feed has been rock solid as Falcon 9 descends onto the drone ship.
Not sure how they did that. I was asked, is there a Starlink on top of there? Did you see a Starlink on top? I didn't. I did not see a Starlink dish.
It wouldn't be surprising to me if they were trying that, but I don't think they would dare use it for live
I think
broadcast.
it's an equipment. Yeah, it's more of an equipment upgrade with your cameras and your connections and your.
Well, because it's about insulating things so the radio frequency with the lit engines coming down doesn't mess with your uplink and downlink.
Right. Less rattling equals more stable connection. So.
Exactly.
And I think their cameras are more enclosed.
They might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, and as we stand here, Julia and I, we have about 20 more minutes. I know both of us do need to head out about 9 a.m. This morning for various things. So we do have about 20 more minutes. For questions, your questions, can be about Port Canaveral in general, can be about Falcon 9 in general, or SpaceX, or ULA, or Blue Origin, or NASA, or anything. We're here at the launch, at the most famous launch site, one of the most famous launch sites in the world. So if you've got any question at all, heck, even throw some questions about China or Russia or Europe.
Those are all Chris's questions,
I'll throw them to Julia just for that. No.
You'll get no answers.
But yeah, if you've got any questions whatsoever, just let us know.
And we do have a super chat, Chris. Urban SpaceX Man with a 30-pound super chat. Have something more than a coffee. So another contribution to the breakfast fund for Chris and Julia for their hard work this morning. So we really appreciate that. And then we do have some more questions now. A couple of people are wondering. Yeah, a couple people are wondering if it would be possible to zoom in on the booster a bit more.
Oh, haha, I'm just doing that now, actually, yes. And am I good on bottom third too, Michael?
Yes, that's perfect. And
looks like I am, yes, perfect. Good.
Kizishi asks,
and they are actually at the dock, so they're not going to be moving.
Oh wow, this is like crazy.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have the comms delay. Sorry, everyone. But there's a question about what drone ship they're going to use for the next Vandenberg launch.
Oh, right, the Vandenberg launch. Which one is that's oh, what is that one? Oh man, I'm totally blanking on this name right now. I saw it yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah. Sentinel 6. Isn't Sentinel 6 light enough that they can RTLS the booster back to Vandenberg for that one?
Yeah, I think Sentinel 6 would probably be RTLS.
I think the large reason I think when we looked, when they made this decision to move Just Read the Instructions here, and of course we know they have another drone ship called a Shortfall of Gravitas, but we also know that is for Starship. That's not for the Falcon 9 fleet.
Okay, so we've
here that a Shortfall of Gravitas is the one. Well, isn't that what they said? That the third one would be in support of Starship, and it would be called a Shortfall of Gravitas.
Oh.
And that we know it looks nothing like Just Read the Instructions.
We can't
and of course
find
I
it.
Still love you. No. It looks.
We don't know what it looks like.
We just know it looks very different.
Do we think it's a barge? Do we think it's a boat? Or do we think, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what the design of that ends up being.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think when we look, I was just saying but we think when they made the decision to move Just Read the Instructions over here, because they were moving a lot of the polar missions that couldn't RTLS over to here, over to Florida with the opening of the Southern Polar Corridor route, that basically what they would do at Vandenberg is RTLS the boosters. as much as possible, and that's why a lot of the traffic at Vandenberg went down as they moved Southcom over to here. And we know from their environmental impact assessment reports that they anticipate at least, that they anticipate a maximum polar flight rate from Florida of 10 flights per year, between either the Falcon 9 or the Falcon Heavy. Right now, so we know that that's what they're looking at here for Florida. So I would imagine that with no drone ship on the West Coast, they would reserve West Coast polar missions for ones that they know they can RTLS and get the booster back that way. Yeah.
Chris, I just
It's not
lifted the
tucked in there.
booster cap on the
Indeed,
far
yeah.
right.
Go ahead, Michael. There we go. It is swaying in the gentle breeze, but the booster cap is not moving yet on the crane.
That'll be a while.
Yeah, just yet, but you can see it swinging there. But that's a good view of both of them.
Actually, it's kind of impressive. It's already attached and risen up. That's,
Yeah, like
usually
they're-
it's on the ground
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. So they're definitely moving quicker than the last time we were here. When the Arianespace booster came back.
Yeah.
With the NASA worm logo on it, they were like picking up the cherry pickers and moving the cherry pickers onto the deck with that crane at first.
I wonder if
and we
we
can
have
see it
weather.
moving now. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have some weather maybe coming this way? It's still pretty gray here.
It's pretty gray and overcast, and there were some pretty impressive storms actually this morning when I got in the car to come here.
Yeah.
So it is possible that we do, well, and if we don't have dynamic weather in the area right now, which
we will.
it looks like up to the northwest, we do have some dynamic weather. But oh my gosh, we will later on.
We will.
This has been a crazy, insane week weather-wise for
I
Florida.
thought lightning
Yeah.
struck the like outside of my office wall, like
Yeah.
right on the other side of the wall the other day. I jumped
Yeah.
so high. It's been that dynamic around here. So we may
And we
actually.
had quarter-sized hail in Port Orange, and
Yeah.
the tornado that ripped through DeLand on Tuesday.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was really bad here.
Their goal today may simply be to put the cap on and process it tomorrow. It's hard to say.
Could be.
Just make sure she's secure.
They could also be going for the land speed record because here comes the cap.
Yeah. Well, we might see that before 9 a.m.
So, yeah.
That's kind of different. So then the question becomes: do they process it on the barge, or do they process it on the stand?
Right, right. Because if I remember correctly, right, if I'm looking at this, the top of that crane, right, the big red and white parts
Yep.
that jut up, there are little things that stick up at the top that look like either communication antennas or lightning masts. I assume those are lightning masts, right? So that if
I think so.
because it's the tallest part, it's the tallest thing
Yeah,
there, so
yeah.
I would assume they're lightning. It's a mini sort of lightning protection system.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could be totally wrong. If anyone knows anyone about a crane, or that particular crane, I know at one of our streams we actually had a crane, the person who
Yeah, we
operates
had
that type
somebody.
of crane
Yeah.
on here. If you can tell us what those things are, if they're just communication antennas or if there is some sort of built-in lightning protection system.
I mean, there's got to be some sort of
for
system
something here,
because
yeah.
there's a an actual compartment for somebody to sit in on the crane.
Right, right.
Um,
So we will see that. I'll lower this back down so you can see more of the booster there. And that cap came over about halfway, but is now stopped. The crane has stopped. So, but they are at the berth. They are at the port.
They're
At Pier 6, docking Pier 6.
Cargo Pier 6.
Cargo Pier 6. There we go. Cargo Pier 6.
North Cargo Pier 6.
North
to be
Cargo
exact.
Pier 6. There we go. See, I'm learning. Julie
He's
is teaching me
learning.
all about port.
Yeah, they're pretty
She
much
tells me, let's
done.
meet at the boat ramp, and I'm like, where's that?
Where's that?
But yes, any other questions, Michael?
Yes. Amy, thank you for the $3 super chat. Will the U.S. still launch from Kazakhstan?
Ah, okay, so will the U.S. still launch from Kazakhstan? Yes. So this is a question relating to the Russian Soyuz vehicle, which is one of the 2 operational crew transfer vehicles that exist right now for the International Space Station. How great is it that we can say that now, that there are 2 of them again?
That's exciting.
Yes, but this is a question in relation to the Russian Soyuz and how crew launches are going to work with the rotation. And the answer to that is yes. The Soyuzes will continue to launch from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And from what we understand right now, there will always be at least one USOS crew member, most likely an American, a NASA astronaut, on board each Soyuz mission. The reason for this goes back to the way that the contracts for the ISS were originally written, where there has to, by the contract, be at least one American and one Russian on board the space station at all times. They can jigger that around if they absolutely had to, but per the contracts and per the law, there has to be one American and one Russian on board the space station at all times. And the only way to ensure that with the various crew rotation vehicles is to have an American launching on a Soyuz. That way, if a crew American vehicle or person on one of those crew missions ever had an emergency or a medical emergency and they had to come back right away, if an American had launched on a Soyuz, well, that's their return vehicle. So they get to stay at the space station right now. And that's why originally the idea was also that one Russian would always launch on one of the US crew vehicles. Except we have seen Russia, and this is where I say they can tweak it if they really want to. But of course we have seen Russia sort of step back and say, well, eventually we'll fly our cosmonauts on Dragon and Starliner, but Roscosmos does not believe that either vehicle is safe enough to do that for right now. So Roscosmos declined a seat on Crew 1, launching in October, and Roscosmos also declined a seat on Crew 2 for SpaceX.
All right.
So Crew 1 will have 3 Americans and 1 Japanese astronaut on board, and Crew 2 will have 2 Americans, a European, and a Japanese astronaut on board. And later this year, in October, I believe October 17th right now, is the next Soyuz mission, Soyuz MS-17, and Dr. Kate Rubins, a NASA astronaut, will be launching with 2 Russian cosmonaut counterparts on that mission up to the International Space Station as well. And there is an open seat still on Soyuz MS-18 in spring that can be filled by a U.S. crew member as well. So that is where they stand. But yes, we will keep launching out of Kazakhstan as well. Oh, and all the tugs and everything have abandoned the drone ship, so the drone ship is secured at this point to North Cargo Pier 6. Did I get that right?
And Chris gets a cookie.
Yes! Julia cookie, yes. But yes, so Falcon 9 back at its home port in Florida for refurbishment and potential and reuse on a future mission later this year. Michael, how are we doing question-wise?
We had another super chat from Dana Anderson. They're asking, what is the SpaceX launch schedule at this time?
Okay, so the SpaceX launch schedule at this time. So we'll talk about the first 2 missions, but there's a huge caveat to the first 2 missions that are on their upcoming manifest. So next week, right now, per the schedule, we have on Thursday SAOCOM 1B, the Argentine polar mission that will launch from Slick 40 here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. It will be the first time that a polar mission occurs from the Florida spaceport in 60 years, since 1960. That one will also be a return to launch site landing of the Falcon 9 booster to LZ-1. The following day, so potentially less than 24 hours later, another Falcon 9 is currently tentatively scheduled to depart 39A with the next round of Starlink satellites. The SAOCOM 1B mission on Thursday is targeting launch at 7:19 p.m. Eastern or 23:19 UTC. For its launch, we don't have a time yet for the Starlink mission on Friday. Now, both of those missions are completely completely dependent on the Delta IV Heavy from ULA launching the NROL 44 mission on Wednesday morning at 2:16 a.m. So from the Florida spaceport next week, we have 3 missions in 3 days, all within roughly 48 to 52 hours of one another based on how this timing could work out. Now, the question is obviously how can this, now the Cape can support this because while Delta IV does not have an automated flight termination system, but a manual one, the Falcon 9s do have automated flight termination, which makes the turnaround between rockets and the way the range has to reconfigure makes it much quicker to do when you have one rocket that has automated flight termination. And here's the other thing, is that technically the range only requires roughly 13 hours between 2 Falcon missions. So potentially, and this is why I say we don't have the time for Starlink yet, so it's a little tricky to determine exactly the timing here, but they technically only need, from a range perspective, 13 hours between Falcon and Starlink because they both have automated flight termination systems. So that's the immediate schedule next week. There are at least 2 Starlink missions scheduled for September, as well as some other paying customer missions for SpaceX. And then the big one that they have on their pending manifest is the October 23rd launch of Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi on the Crew 1 mission up to the International Space Station. Yes. And then for the rest of the year, the manifest is pretty strong. I mean, we can expect, on average, them to aim for 2 Starlink flights a month. In addition to their paying customer flights. Paying customer flights always take priority, so the Starlinks will always shift and move around them, as we have seen.
Yeah.
Most recently with the 10th Starlink mission that was originally June and then July and then finally launched in August.
I just picked up my 2 car passes from my desk and I went, June?
Yeah.
Isn't this the, oh, that's August. That was all still the same mission.
Same mission, yep.
Yeah.
And then in terms of long range out into the end of the year, we do believe at this point that the Falcon Heavy flight for the Air Force that was this year is now early next year. So we do not believe there will be a Falcon Heavy on the manifest that will actually fly this year. I think technically it's still December 2020 per like the official word on it, but we do believe that is 2021 at this point for the next Falcon Heavy flight.
And then cross our fingers, all of this is all pending tropical storm season. So.
Well, yes, and that is to say the insane launch schedule next week with the Delta and the 2 Falcons all going one a day is all dependent on what happens with the storm that may or may not have been named overnight that's out in the Atlantic that is predicted to either be a very strong tropical storm or a low-grade Category 1 as of 8 p.m. last time I looked. It would either be the L storm or the M storm. It depends on, there are 2, and it's just kind of a race as to which one gets named first. And again, last I looked was 8 p.m. It's entirely possible that one or both of them is named. At this point, I just have not had a chance to actually look this morning to see, but basically, there is a strong tropical storm or hurricane that is expected to be over South Florida Monday.
And Chris, for our viewers who are not local, don't live on, this Gulf or Eastern Coast, how long does hurricane season last for around here?
Well, recently or historically?
What was the calendar date they used to say?
So the official calendar delineations for hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin are June 1st through November 30th.
Right.
I believe it is now 5 or 6 years in a row that storms have formed earlier than that, like in April and May, and there's a lot of, I know, discussion about with how climate change is affecting water temperatures, and that maybe it's time to redefine hurricane. A little bit, to redefine hurricane season, that it's starting earlier and earlier each year.
And we've seen them as late as October.
Oh, we've seen them as late as December.
Oh, not
The
okay.
latest forming storm on record in the Atlantic Basin formed on the 29th or 30th of December.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
In 2005, which was the year of Hurricane Katrina.
Oh,
And it was the
wow.
year that we had to go to the Greek alphabet because we ran out of names
Please let
on
this,
the
okay.
list, and we made it to Zeta. It was
Great.
Tropical Storm Zeta that formed on the 30th of December.
Oh my gosh. So hopefully we don't have that sort of a season this year.
Right, but
Not that
it's
we're
also,
trending, we're kind of trending that way. But
so far, I believe it's the B, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and K storms were all the earliest forming storms of their letter class on record in the Atlantic Basin. The earliest A storm, the earliest G storm, the earliest K storm. It has just been an absolutely incredibly busy year, but thankfully not on the intensity scale.
Right.
Thankfully not on the
Thankfully.
intensity scale. And we are really being aided this year because the Atlantic is prime in terms of its water temperature and everything.
Dry
The
air. Who do we
Atlantic,
have to thank for the dry air?
Africa, the continent of Africa. We have
thank
a
you,
lot.
Africa.
The Saharan dust storms and the dry air that is just racing off of Africa is really saving us from the major monster storms. But we are not at the peak of hurricane season yet. Hurricane
I
season
know.
peaks in mid-September.
Yeah.
So we are not there yet, and we are obviously watching and monitoring all of that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. So, and Michael, we have time for one more question here before we have to wrap it up on our end.
Sounds good. And
But the cap is actually over Falcon 9. Hang on.
Huh?
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yep, Parker Huntington was wondering, when will AFTS, it's an automated flight termination system, be required at KSC?
That is an excellent question. All rockets flying after calendar year 2021 from Cape Canaveral have to have automated flight termination system, with one exception. NASA asked for and was granted the exception for SLS. So SLS, whenever it flies, will not have automated flight termination system, will keep manual for the entirety of its existence at this point. But Atlas V and Delta IV do need to transition over to automated flight termination systems. AFTS is being baked into Vulcan's design. Vulcan will debut with that capability because it needs it regardless. But this is where the common avionics systems between the Deltas, the Atlases, and the Vulcans all come in really handy. Because with the common avionics and the common software systems that are used between all the vehicles, once you develop automated flight termination system for one, you have developed it for all. So the switchover for Atlas and Deltas to use AFTS here in the coming years should go very seamlessly, because they've developed it for Vulcan, and Vulcan shares the common avionics software system both for ground and flight operations with Delta and Atlas. So that switchover should not be a huge problem, and obviously Starship will have it baked into the design as well. So great question there. And Michael, if there's another really short one, we can take that as well.
Yeah, quick super sticker from Drunk, 3.49 euros, appreciate that. And then any thoughts on the apparent leak on the ISS? That's a question from
or maybe not, I guess. Maybe Michael can hear me on that one for that. So but yes, so thank you all for joining us this morning. I know it was a very early wake-up roll call for us here, but you can see Falcon 9 safely back in port, B1049.6, triumphantly returned from the first ever 6-3 flight of an orbital class booster for SpaceX, and you can see the lifting cap is over the top of Falcon 9. Right now, a very, very fast maneuver for them. But Falcon 9 is safely back. They will get it all connected, get it hoisted up, retract the landing legs, get it off of the octograbber, pick it up, and bring it over to their facilities for refurbishment and potential reuse. So right now, for NASASpaceflight, the next live stream will be our live show. Will potentially be our live show tomorrow.
Yeah,
We'll have confirmation of that later today. But other than that, we will have a rather large schedule of programming events for you over the weekend. We know Starship is scheduled to do its static fire on the 23rd, on Sunday. And then shortly thereafter, we depending on when that goes, that's when we should get a date for the hop for SN6 out there in Boca Chica. And then we will be here with you for the Delta IV launch on Wednesday morning at 2:16 a.m. Eastern, 6:16 UTC. We will then be back the following day for SAOCOM 1B, launching at 19:19 Eastern Time or 23:19 UTC.
Oh, and we'll be in multiple places for that.
And then, yes, and we'll be in multiple places for that. Yeah, the team will all be together on the NASA Causeway for Delta IV Heavy.
Yep.
Julia, Thomas, and I will all be together for that one. And then Thomas and I will be on NASA Causeway for SAOCOM as well. And I'm not saying that wrong. We're going to be on the NASA Causeway, not the ITL Causeway, because of land overflight of the Falcon 9 as she heads south onto the polar trajectory. But we will be there for the 1919 EDT 2319 UTC launch of SAOCOM 1B on Thursday. And then whenever the launch time is for Starlink on Friday, we will be here for that as well. Again, all of that is dependent on where the hurricane or tropical storm ends up going on Monday. That is anticipated to impact Florida in some regard. With a likely landfall in South Florida. Likely just rain here, but how big the system is, how intense it is, will potentially impact, L-2 day operations, and we'll have to wait to see how much those would be impacted, because the two SpaceX missions are completely dependent on the Delta IV Heavy getting up and out on Wednesday morning, because it is a National Reconnaissance Office mission flight and a major classified satellite for national security. So that one definitely has range priority. So if it encounters a delay in scrubs on Wednesday, it has Thursday as the backup day, and everything else just slides to the left a day. But we will be here for that whenever they happen. I know, Julia, you're setting remotes. We'll be together on the Causeway for some. You're going to watch SAOCOM from off base. And everything, but it'll be a good day. It'll be a good week. But you'll have to forgive us if we're not absolutely delirious from lack of sleep, but also happiness. Because it's also entirely possible that while we're not the ones who would work this, that our behind-the-scenes production team of Dawson Michael will also be working a Starship hop while we're working these 3 launches next week as well. So all of that is to say, next week could be very, very busy as we close out the month of August. We will be here to bring it all to you. Thank you all for joining us. Julia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Or rather, I should say, thank you for allowing me to join you, because this is your home territory in the port. I am your guest.
Well, thank you for being my guest.
But that is going to do it for us today. Thank you to John and Michael behind the scenes, our production team. Thank you to all of you who are channel members, and to everyone who provided a super chat. I know Julia and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and that'll do it for us here from Port Canaveral. If you're still watching, look out later today on NASASpaceflight. Go ahead and check out our store for merchandise. You might find, some nice Falcon 9 attire here, Julia. Maybe something from the port, maybe something about a
beach towel?
A beach towel in the design of one of the drone ships, perhaps.
Yeah, you just might find one. I know I have one. You might want one too.
And what did we call that drone ship on our beach towel?
Of course I still lie here?
Of course I still lie here, exactly. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and head on over to our store. Check out our merchandise that we have for sale. And also thank you to everyone, the channel memberships, the super chats. Thank you so much for the support. We really do greatly appreciate it. And watch out on site later today for the big update on the current status of Vulcan's development from ULA. That'll do it from Port Canaveral. I'm Chris Gebhardt.
And I'm Julia Bergeron.
Have a great day, everyone.
pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll with planet. Flight outside of speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.